oatmeal cookie waffle with chia seeds and some oat bran and almond flour, and blueberries on top, and there's some Saskatoons that I picked last year and thawed out, and some mandarin orange slices if James wants them. He's going to talk about the Rolling Stones' Gimme Shelter, and then Linda Ronstadt, The Sound of My Voice. I'm going to talk about In Search of Fellini, probably not unplanned, The Adjustment Bureau, Women, Northern Exposure. This starts at season 5, so I'm going to talk about season 5. Farador and Wolf. And first I'm going to read Rondel to you. And, well, anyway. And this Rondel, I wrote this yesterday, June 30th, 2024. So, it's already July 1st. So this one I didn't end up reading yesterday, but it's called Today at Henderson. Today at Henderson, we're sure to see some workers planning for the day ahead when thousands gather here excitedly. Today at Henderson, tomorrow's crowds still sleep as though they're dead, and water in this lake rests peacefully before it mirrors bursts of white and red. Tomorrow's fireworks scene is not for me. I'm glad we showed up earlier instead. This quiet shoreline suits me perfectly today at Henderson. So, that's that.
Rondel's Rondel, you said?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a tough form to write. Some of those medieval French forms are really tortuous. And
I don't know. You get used to things, I suppose, if you write them enough. So it's
well,
good to
you've
get
written
practice.
more of them than I.
So James is going to talk about these later, I suppose, and while he eats right now, because he may as well. The Saskatoons are warm, so he may as well get to them. But anyway, I ended up bringing out Northern Exposure because I was watching season 5, and I never watched this show when it was on. I knew some people who watched it, and they'd talk about it, and
it was something
I never
like
got into it.
Cult classic, was there, or something?
Well, I suppose a lot of people got into it, but I didn't.
I never watched it once, I don't think.
I couldn't stand it, so I didn't watch it. Anyway, it just seemed so phony to me. The people did not seem like they'd be from small town Alaska, because I don't know. I figure that I don't know what small town Alaskan people seem like, really,
I hope it's not Sarah Palin.
But honestly, well, she's from big town Alaska. She's not small town Alaska.
Well,
but anyway, I'm from northern Alberta. Well, some have told me that's not northern Alberta, the Peace Country, but really there's not very many people up above. Like I came from a little town. Well, actually, I came from a farm near a little town called Eaglesham, and anyway, so there's not too many people up further north than there in Alberta, and it's pretty far north, really. But there are people that live, like, Alaska's further north, but it's warmer than where I'm from.
Most of Alaska's further north.
Yeah. So anyway.
Anyway, there's north in terms of physiography, and then there's north in terms of human geography.
Yeah.
And it is far, far north when we're talking about human geography, when we're talking, and with respect to Alberta.
Yeah. So anyway, but so I expect small town, especially, you know, bush kind of people, to be a certain way, and this is not how I expect them to be. They seem, a lot of the people here, it just seems like they didn't really have an idea of what the culture was like amongst small town hunting crowd kind of people, right? It's not like New York or something like that. Anyway, but with moose wandering through. So,
or LA, really.
Or whatever.
Like Hollywood, right?
So I just didn't get into the show. But anyway, season 5, I thought it was funny because they mentioned a few things. They mentioned Fellini. One young native man was interested in Fellini films, and it's funny because I have In Search of Fellini here, which got my top of the stack. But, I mean, James's videos are above mine because they're nonfiction and he finds them very interesting. But I found In Search of Fellini very interesting, even though I didn't like Fellini films. I remember watching them and thinking, wow, this is terrible. Like in this show, In Search of Fellini, at one point her mother and like the main character's mother and aunt are watching her Fellini movies, and her mom is saying something like, there's no plot, there's no, or whatever, and what's this about? Well, there's no plot, what's it? And yeah, that's how I felt watching Fellini films. It's like, okay, why am I giving my time to this? Anyway, so they mentioned Fellini in this, and they also mentioned some poetry. There, one young man, the radio announcer recited some poetry too. And it's one that James has recited to me that he likes. It's a Yeats one about the strand of hair and whatever.
Strand of hair? Oh, that's right. It's a very good one.
Yeah. So it's a good one. And James knows it off by heart, I'm sure, because he's recited it to me before. But we have quite a stack to go through. So anyway, you can look into that yourself. So, In Search of Fellini. Yeah, it's an interesting movie. It's about a very sheltered young lady who goes out and she's in search of Fellini in Italy. She goes out and she doesn't just go out of her house. She goes out of her town. She goes to Italy, and really she's in search of herself. And she finds herself, and she finds her life in the process of when she's trying to find Fellini, and it's really quite beautiful. So I think a lot of people would like it. So anyway, Unplanned got second in the stack. I'm not going to talk about it right now because this will take me a long time to go through. But like James peeked in and he said, "Is this a Hallmark thing?" No. It's not a Hallmark thing.
I don't know.
There's some pretty heavy stuff in there. So it really should have a warning on the front, I think.
Not Hallmark.
Not Hallmark. Even though you might think so at first because of the acting and whatever. But no. So the Adjustment Bureau is next in the stack, and that I like Emily Blunt. I think I like her in everything I see her in. And she's co-starring with Matt Damon in this. And this is a Philip Dick
Philip K. Dick,
story.
Sci-fi.
Yeah. So I didn't realize that until the end, and I saw his name, and I'm like, oh, it's interesting. So it just reminded me a little bit of The Matrix, opening doors and going somewhere very different or whatever. And it was interesting enough. I mean, I wouldn't have thought if you just gave me the story, I would have been like, wow, is that enough story to make a full movie? But it worked out. So, women. Now, I was a little bit wary of this movie because it's about a man who tortures and uses women for his own purposes and then disposes of them. And I thought, oh my gosh, what is this on the front here? And I see, like, it looks like maybe a hose or something, and with a woman tied up to a chair, and I'm thinking, is he electrocuting them or what? I don't know if I want to put myself through this. But it's actually not that he's torturing the women is through, like, he has sound that he's playing, that unpleasant noises.
Like hip hop or something like that.
No.
Not quite that bad.
No. So he's playing on speaker, on headphones. So that's what how they're getting, and light, so it's more like the idea of what you think military people go through or whatever, training.
Once they get through waterboarding.
So anyway, I mean, it's not pleasant to watch, really, or whatever. And I don't think anybody, well, I guess there's some people who think that's pleasant to watch. But anyway, it's kind of an interesting story. I really, as much as this is one of those Gravitas Ventures films, and I don't tend to think very much of them, but sometimes I'm surprised. And this one, I really didn't know where to put it in the stack. I thought, gee, I wish that they'd put more into the story. I wish that they'd made it into like a mini series or something like that, or even a television series where they spend a whole season watching, you know, unraveling this story, because it's interesting, but you need to go deeper to interest me more, right? And so, but I liked the way it ended. So honestly, I really hope somebody else redoes this and puts more thought into making us understand all of the characters and whatever, and how, and the whole situation, whatever. This actually could be something that got rated a lot higher in the stack than it did, because there's something there. I just don't think it was. I mean, they wrapped it up in an hour and a half, and so as far as a movie goes, they did the job. Because I mean, if it's going to be longer than an hour and a half, you're really going to have to make it worth my while. And with this, it needed to be a lot longer than an hour and a half. So they did a good job editing it to make it an hour and a half long, right? But honestly, it needs to be longer. It needs to be really fleshed out. So, Farador. This one you're going to have to read some subtitles. It's in French, and I've said that I like the stuff coming out of Quebec a lot lately, but this one's not so great. But it's honestly, I don't know if people would do a much better job of this. This story is about Dungeon and Dragon sort of crowd. So they're some young teenage boys that they're playing this Dungeons and Dragons game that just goes on and on. They're still playing the same game 18 years later. And so it follows these guys, and they've stayed together. They rent the same house together and all that sort of thing, and they keep playing this game. And I don't know. I guess they did it's kind of a funny idea, and they show the characters both as the people they play in real life in this movie, and the characters they play as their Dungeons and Dragons, as their avatars, right, in the game. And it's funny, but not quite funny enough to hold my attention and get it higher up in the stack. And
if it had gone on 20 years, maybe,
I don't
instead
know.
of 18 years.
So, well, this got bottom of the stack. This was truly terrible. This is about. Somebody might have been able to do an interesting thing with this. I mean, they had a bunch of Roman-looking costumes, and they thought, okay, well, we want to do a film that's about ancient Rome and werewolves somehow. And
in a big forest that looks like England.
Well, the Romans went all over the place.
Well, they did go to England.
And in this story, you have an African woman that is a part of their group, and that's confusing. Well, but it's not only that. Half of their group are women, and honestly, I just watch a bunch of great course stuff about Rome, and I don't believe this. I don't believe that their warrior queens would be women and wandering around together.
The Romans, they still were a queen called Boudica in England, present-day England. She would have been Celtic, right?
Well, I mean, they could have decided to do that story and somehow put some werewolves in. I don't know. I'm sorry, James. But
I want you to know.
you know, if somebody had
I held
actually
on to
done some
those
research
Saskatoons
and tried to actually make this a story worth watching, but it wasn't. It was really bad.
That's hilarious. The chickadees, they just came flocking once Pauline started throwing out the one-liners. Oh,
yeah,
man.
they're sweet. They want me to bring them food.
I know.
They see James eating and they're like, where's our food?
There's a woodpecker up there.
Oh, and a little nuthatch.
Is it
Hello, yes. Hello, it's a downy. And there's a nuthatch in my tree too.
Yeah, I can't see it, but
babies.
that's okay.
I'm going to have to bring them food because, I mean, they're really putting on a show for me.
You're going to do that right now?
Yeah, so you can go ahead and talk about the Rolling Stones.
Yeah,
and
I'm almost more fascinated about the downy woodpecker because I can't recall seeing too many of them here.
No.
There we go.
We know one from the river bottom.
Sit down.
I call him Gordy Downey Jr.
Yeah. Did he leave?
No, he's still there. Okay.
Oh, I
Look
see
in the
him.
apple tree.
Okay, I'm going to try to show you that. You see him in the tree?
But Gordy Downey Jr.
Now he's hiding on me.
And he has
There's a nuthatch up there on top there. Well, I mean, she's on the top of that big stump. And anyway, I'm going to go get them some food and you can talk about the Rolling Stones.
Oh, man.
How's your cookie waffle?
It's good, but it partly went down the wrong when I was laughing. Oh, well. I'll be paying for that laugh for maybe the whole day. Anyway. Yesterday I watched 2 movies. Ordinarily, I just listen to the movies in the background. Pauline's playing, and it's only some of them. Sorry about that. The birds are really flocking here today, and they seem to be hungry or something like that. Anyway, watched 2 movies. This one, Gimme Shelter. I'm blocking up Mick Jagger's face. Anyway, yeah, maybe that's the tasteful thing to do, but a lot of people think it was ugly even then. So this is dated 1969. Events leading up to December the 6th, 1969, almost 1970. And I'm telling you, the theme song for this maybe could have been Bad Moon Rising by Creedence Clearwater Revival. When was that put out? I believe it was 68 or 69. Rolling Stone back then, magazine talking about, said that was kind of like the theme song of the times to come, Bad Moon Rising. A lot of it was willed on and wished on themselves by the folks who didn't like Richard Nixon. If they'd actually turned out and voted,
Hey, baby.
1968, Hubert Humphrey would have been president of the United States, and maybe for 8 years. No, they didn't like Hubert because he was the vice president, and basically a figurehead position in American politics up until, well, during the Eisenhower administration. Richard Nixon probably ran things more than Eisenhower did. Dick Cheney, we all know what he did for George Bush Jr. And really, you know, one of these days I got to write a book about the American presidency, Republican presidents after World War II. Now, I'm going to call it not the imperial presidency, but the imperial vice presidency. The vice president during the Reagan administration, unofficial of course, de facto, not de jure, wasn't George Bush Sr., but maybe Nancy Reagan, or even more accurately, her astrologer. Pretty sad how many decisions were made during the Reagan administration on the basis of Nancy Reagan's astrologer's opinion of things. And then there's Dick Cheney for Bush Jr. And who was the, well, I mean, during Bush Sr.'s administration, Dan Quayle was pretty well a figurehead for a figurehead maybe, but he was actually a vice president, being a vice president for the president, and that's Bush Sr. He's actually the most competent by far Republican president during my lifetime. So that includes Eisenhower, Nixon, Gerald Ford,
this neighborhood's dangerous, and it sounds as though something dangerous is happening in the background. Man. Hope it doesn't come to blows or gunshots or a knife fight. The place where it's coming from has had, I'm told, 3 murders, at least 2, in the fairly recent past, and the most recent one was a knifing. That's about 4 years ago. It's company thought, isn't it? Anyway, sounds like a bit misty. But the police spend a lot of time in front of it. Well, the cars, the police go inside. And I will point out it's not one individual house. It's several dwellings in one. Anyway, Gimme Shelter, 1969, December 6th, but it's events leading up to that. Rolling Stones, December the 6th concert in Altamont, California. Where is that? It's kind of like, more than anything else, a pass going from San Francisco Bay Area to the interior, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's somewhere around, is Lawrence Livermore? Around there? Somewhere around there. Anyway, it's east of Oakland, east of, I think it's more, well, say southeast, but east of Oakland. Anyway, story of the concert, in case you haven't heard of it. Maybe it's hard to get people to care, but the Rolling Stones were, well, Mick Jagger, maybe, I'm partly Scottish, so maybe he should have been partly Scottish too. He's a little bit tight-fisted with the pound, or the buck in this case, because he's earning money in the United States. He went to the London School of Economics, and maybe he knew a little bit about saving money, and maybe he cared too much. He didn't just know. So he thought he'd save money by hiring. Earlier that year, they drew, I'm told, something like 300,000 people to Hyde Park in the middle of London. Maybe that's a bit of an overestimation, a lot of an overestimation. What he did to save money, I think it was sometime around, well, it was in the summer, a couple of days after Brian Jones was killed, from what I could tell. The official story is he drowned in his pool, but there were some thuggish workers working on his house. And his house was in the country. It's actually the place that Winnie the Pooh stories were written about, Cochford Farm, I think it was called. So A.A. Milne lived there, and he wrote, he's the guy that wrote the Winnie the Pooh stories, and Eeyore and all these characters, Tigger. And there were some people doing some renovation for Brian Jones, who bought the property, and Brian Jones was a shell of himself, maybe even a shell of himself. He was one of the first drug casualties of the rock and roll era, and the story goes, it's not the official story, that Brian Jones is in the pool, and these guys who were working, I guess they were taking a break, they were kind of ducking him in the water, duck. He couldn't do anything about it, he was so weak and all this sort of stuff. He's asthmatic too, or something like that. At any rate, like I say, he was on his last legs anyway. And the story goes that he, they ducked him one too many times, and so you maybe could call it manslaughter and stuff like that, but I don't know. Anyway, he just ended up drowned. So they had a concert after that. It's kind of like a funerary celebration. Mick Jagger came out in a dress, recited a few lines from, I don't think the whole thing, maybe a few lines from Adonais, which was written by Shelley, Percy Bysshe Shelley,
it's an elegy to commemorate the death of John Keats, if I'm not mistaken. So it dated to, well, it would be about 200 years before now, 150 years before Brian Jones' death, and Mick Jagger stripped out of the dress, and he was wearing kind of like a big belt, black belt, black pants and stuff. I don't know if he even had a shirt on. And how much time? 5?
4, yeah.
4 minutes. Okay. So I'm just giving the preliminaries for this, but anyway, they decided at that concert in London, they had the British Hells Angels, which were kind of like, they might as well have been driving or riding tricycles by comparison with American Hells Angels. So he comes to America about half a year later, December the 6th, and he figures he's going to do a free concert. They've gone from New York, they've gone barnstorming through the United States, and they're ending up on the West Coast. They've already decided to do a free concert in the San Francisco area around December the 6th. It's important to understand geography. So it shows here the night before, they're doing a crash job setting the stage up at Altamont, the Speedway, where they had this free concert. And they're saying it's 30 above weather. Well, that's not 30 above centigrade for you folks in Canada and most of the rest of the world. That's 30 above Fahrenheit. And I think freezing is 32 above, so it's below freezing. What were they thinking, having a free concert that time of year? People don't realize it. They think, oh, it's California, it's warm all year around. It's rainy. That's why in the wintertime, rainy and cold. Man, oh man. Stupid. But they decided to hire the Hells Angels, the local chapter. I think it was the Oakland chapter. The chapter that Hunter S. Thompson wrote about. You think Mick would have done a little bit of reading. This chapter beat up Hunter S. Thompson really severely. I think I've seen a picture of it. Closed up one eye. When you get thumped in the eye that badly, the thugs who do that to you are thugs. It's like 2 syllables. Anyway, it's about a minute left to go. Stay tuned.
You still got a couple.
A couple of minutes. Anyway, this is a pretty good movie. It's a great movie, really, because of the subject matter. It's the end of the 60s. It should have been the end of the Innocence, but this innocence is still going on. The idea was amongst these hefty, lefty, shifty, lifty, or whatever I call them, left-wingers. Anyone who's against the cops or the establishment is with us. Yeah, it doesn't work out that way. The Hells Angels aren't that way. Nowadays, it's Muslims. Doesn't matter if they're fundamentalists. They're on the same side. Way back in 1917, it was commies. They were allied with the commies. They had a revolution, and the commies took the revolution over. And then what they did was they killed their allies. Here, they didn't. They basically took over the stage from the Rolling Stones. The Hells Angels did. There's a crowd of 300,000 people there. If I'd been the Rolling Stones, I would have been tempted to say, get rid of the Hells Angels for us, all you folks. But there they are, getting led around by the nose. How many Hells Angels are there? 20? 50? 100? What's 100 against 300,000 people that would have been crushed? But all these people are the Stones are helpless on stage. Brothers and sisters,